Can we switch back depending on how that is?
That was my question.
No. Welcome back to Demystifying Cosmetics, where science meets the shelf. In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most debated, dissected, and sometimes distorted parts of beauty marketing, cosmetic claims. What does it really mean when a product boosts collagen, visibly reduces signs of aging, or nourishes deeply? Is it science? Is it marketing? Or is it both? To help us navigate the blurred lines between science-based and marketing-driven claims, we've assembled an all-star panel of experts, each bringing a different lens from the world of cosmetic science. The team I'd like to introduce you to today's all-star panel. We have Zach Attack Lipsky. He is a skin biologist who's been nerding out on the gut-skin axis and its ties to inflammatory skin condition. His vibe, real wood, unique and built to last. Welcome, Zach.
Thank you. Excited to be on the podcast.
Great. Next, we have Abhishek the Shake Panchow. He is a formulation scientist who's been down the rabbit hole of product safety and regulation. Think oily and warm, comforting with depth. Welcome, Abhishek.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Wonderful. Next, we have Dwight Shitty, an analytical chemist who's been exploring environmental justice and perhaps his context in ingredient sourcing. Steady, understated, like flat paint. Welcome, Dwight.
Well, thank you very much for joining this esteemed crowd.
Wonderful. And last but not least, we have Constancio, I don't call you Ito Gonzalo del Biso. A protein polymer wizard whose brain is currently lit up by molecular bio, recombinant proteins, and AI's potential in biotech. Velvet, deep, moody, and undeniably opulent. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Yes, I hope you enjoyed the nicknames I gave you all. I had provided each of them prompts to get to know them a little bit better. So you can find all of these gentlemen on LinkedIn should you have any questions after the show. But happy you're here and very excited for this exercise.
Yeah, likewise.
Yep. The shake is how you say my name. So
exactly. All right. So what we are going to do, I know that I've kept you guys sort of in the dark, and I said, hey, this is what we're going to do, but now I'll explain the quote unquote rules, but we'll keep it loose. So there's no right or wrong. Let's start there. But we're going to break down real world product claims. So these are claims that I've, grabbed from either a bottle, a deck, even from the FTC's website. So we're going to break down these real world product claims, some that have passed regulatory musters, others that didn't. We'll explore in vitro data, clinical trials, consumer perception studies, and how they shape what brands can and cannot say, and where really science ends and storytelling begins. Your job as panelists is to weigh in on whether a claim is science-based, marketing-based, or a bit of both. And I'd love for you guys to explain why, what makes a claim scientific, what evidence you would need in order to say that it is backed up, and where does it start to maybe lean more into marketing than measurable. I hope you guys will use this as a conversation, not a courtroom. You're able to challenge each other. And again, there is a right or wrong answer in the eyes of the FDC, the FDA, but for our exercise and without context, there is no wrong answer. I've equipped each of you with a paddle, that says science or marketing that you can hold up. And then I will, go through or allow you guys to say why you believe it is such and explain your position. All right. Are we ready?
Yes.
All right. All right. Science marketing, right? Science, we're going to say, is supported by a credible scientific data and is tied to a measurable outcome. What we're going to say is marketing is loosely based, let's say, on ingredient level science, designed to appeal emotionally or differentiate the product, has an implied benefit and has qualitative language. when we're evaluating claims, generally an approach to look at this is to say, is it testable and measurable? Is there clinical or instrumental data supporting it? Does it describe specific ingredients or concentrations? Does it include emotional or ambiguous language? Does it refer to a biological mechanism or measurable change? And is it verifiable by a third party? So this is how I've basically either deemed they're science or marketing based, and in the lack of full checklist on both of them, we'll discuss. All right, the first one up. This is an easy one. So helps reduce the appearance of dark spots from UVA and UVB oxidative damage on the skin surface.
Can we show now?
You show now.
Is there okay?
Yeah, and then you're going to show data after this, right?
I might, yes. All right, so if...
Can we switch back depending on how that data is?
No, your answer is...
I mean, it's like if one of us has a different opinion, it's like you try to convince everyone.
Yes, I'm gonna ask Dwight to start because you're the only one that held up marketing. So what would you expect to see from this for it to be a science-based claim?
Well, I my take on it, help reduce. It's too ambiguous. It's too non-measurable. I mean, what does reduce mean? The appearance is like everything can fall that. I can change the light and it would help reduce the appearance. That's not a science claim.
Okay. All right. Zach, skin biologist, what would you be looking for in terms of substantiation of this claim?
Measurement, in vivo measurement of melanin content, usually through imaging camera sort of study. Interesting that they say specifically from UVA and UVB oxidative damage. That indicates to me some sort of in vitro combination, maybe to look at maybe melanin in that case as well. But yeah, I'm very curious what the data is going to look like.
Well, so I should have prefaced this. A lot of this, what's interesting about the claims world is, right, not everything is published. And so while a website may have one individual thing, they don't normally publish full studies. So I'll show what is given, and then we can say, do we think this is enough or not? All right. So I will do that because then we can have further discussion. So this was based off of image analysis, as far as I can tell. And what was interesting was that they took this study up to 1 year. I don't necessarily know if this picture is very convincing to me. I was like, I guess I see it, but not really. But in terms of now knowing that it has a 1 year in vivo study, with obviously participants that have dark spots, sunspots, things of that nature, would you still call this a science-based or marketing-based claim, or both?
Well, knowing that it's
okay.
Exactly, I go back to marketing, knowing that it's just like an image-based exercise. There's so many variables that you can play with to make things look in one way or another.
Sure.
So I was hoping more like, I don't know, different type of assays where there's margin to play with conditions and obtain the result that you're looking for.
And was this all the information they gave? Like, okay, what
all
kind of doses?
Yeah. No,
this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
No, I'm being serious.
I want to say, like, even if they is the exposure, how did they measure the exposure? I think that was also very important to me. What do you mean by UVA, UVB? Was it just putting people in the sun for how many hours?
Yeah.
What time of the day? If you just like, UVB exposure during dusk, it's like, that's not going to do much to anyone.
Yeah.
And that's the way you can get away with it. It's like, look, spots reduced because the subjects actually received less UV and UVB radiation.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting about this is the claim was that it prevents, right, damage from UVA and UVB oxidative stress. But what this image shows is really that it is a reversal, or not reversal, but reduction in dark spots, right? So it's not exactly like a 1-to-1 to me.
It's not only that, it's the fact that they point that it's on the surface of the skin. What does that really mean? does that mean that the ingredient does not penetrate into the skin? That's why it only works on the surface?
Yeah.
And actually,
Exactly.
what method did they use to measure the antioxidant? I mean, there's a lot of assays out there, but many of them do not reflect what actually happens once the ingredient penetrates into the skin. They don't take into account bioavailability or the degradation processes that it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also question any study that lasts 1 year. Can you have all the variables controlled for this sort of study and truly understand that it's due to whatever your cosmetic claim is? 1 year is a really long time to have people in the study.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very interested actually in getting participants from a lot of, these people that sign up for panels, because I'm curious to understand how much of them actually adhere to the list of things that they have to do. I know I've volunteered before and I've seen some and I'm like, I'm not willing to do that. But if I, was somebody who was like, oh, well, I see the incentive of either free product or getting paid, through Amazon cards or like a small monetary fund, absolutely, I would do it and probably disregard the rules. But that's me, and that's probably not good to admit. But I'm really curious about like some of these panelists, if they're, truly adhering, because it is, right, usually an at-home test. And so, all right. So that was a easy one, but I fear that this group is going to claim everything is marketing. So
Yeah. So it's I think just to revise the rules, are we looking at claims in a way is like, okay, this is the claim. It could be proven scientifically, but the evidence is presented is not. But you could still back it with science.
Yeah, I think for this exercise, it's really like, okay, what they are considering it as probably a science-based claim because it had a consumer perception study. But I think from you guys knowing that all of you were involved in the development of an ingredient for cosmetics, ingredients, what is it exactly that you would look for in order for something to be effective, right, in the lens of a formulation? So really just getting your input on that. And then, calling out these missing items like, oh, well, this is one individual, right? Okay. Are you ready for the next one?
Okay.
Yeah, I think I got it now.
All right. This was actually directly from a product that I have. Gentle Foaming Cleanser effectively removes dirt, makeup, and impurities without over drying skin. Put them up. Science. You're only saying that, Constancio, because I said it's a product that I have.
I didn't know that, but I think this is pretty easy to prove.
Okay. How would you prove it?
Basically, I mean, if you could work with in vitro skin as a model, just apply the makeup or whatever impurity you want to work with, wash it, and then measure with FTIR, Raman, or any other methodology to see how much of the ingredient you want to remove is still remaining.
Yeah, I was going to just comment too, like especially the gentle part, right? Gentle foaming indicates like you're not removing any sort of like the extracellular lipids that exist on the skin too, because that could be the sort of like over drying part that happens in a lot of cleansers, right? So if you don't remove those extracellular lipids, but you show that you can take away a lot of the different dirts, et cetera, during like tape stripping in vivo, you can do that as well. So sorry,
And then is this when Dwight would come in and he would look at those tape strippings and say,
exactly.
Yeah, I was like, really? But it's potentially reasonably semi-quantitative, depending on what you use. The over drying is vague, but there are probably ways of defining that. So
I agree with Dwight. I think that was the word that put me off. I was like, almost put up the marketing thing.
Yeah.
So the over drying part, it does not sit well with me. There's no form. The gentle foaming cleanser, effectively cleaning dirt, makeup, impurities. That's easy. Gentle foaming. You could just choose milder surfactants, and it could be a very simple formulation claim. Like you won't even have to go into any other aspects of how damaging it is for the skin or not. And dirt, makeup, impurities. Just take a skin model, put some dirt, makeup, impurities on it, clean it with it, and if it works, it works. That's it, done.
Don't you get the feeling that they try to always put like two different claims together? One that it's easy to prove, and the other one that it's not so easy.
Yeah, it's kind of like Mad Libs when they're like enter adjective. But I also like I was giggling to myself just now thinking about this group being like, "Hey guys, let's make some marketing claims," and how like absolutely dull they would be.
Right, because you would think that like
We're like,
we would
no,
be
that's
very
not totally
flexible,
accurate.
No, we resemble that statement.
All right. I decided that I felt this was both. So this was actually based on a consumer perception study. So they call it a clinical. I call it a consumer perception study.
Yeah.
Agree.
Where they had 30 women, and after 2 weeks of use, asked them questions regarding their degree of agreement. So strongly agree, strongly disagree, that leveling. So this is how they came to have these base claims. I think they also may have, which they didn't allude to in any of the data that they presented, but going back to what you said, Abhishek, utilizing surfactants that are well documented as being quote unquote mild, and or could have used an RIPT claim with a panel that had either 50 to 100% self-perceived sensitive skin to use that, come up with that gentle claim. So I kind of said I felt it was a little bit of both.
I think they had a good opportunity here, and then it's like, oh, we just do one study and that's it.
All right. This one had like a list, so I figured I'd add them all. So vitamin C helps to reduce the appearance of fine line and wrinkles, stimulates collagen production, improves skin elasticity, and protects against UV damage.
Oh, this like, come on, you have to use science for this.
But it's pretty broad, with all these sort of claims, right? Like it's not when I think of the scientific claims, which may not necessarily be like the most interesting language, as what you pointed out, right? So improve skin like elasticity, like yes, you can do those sort of like in vivo measurements to measure like elasticity. They use suction to do that, right?
Yeah.
Measure the mechanical properties, but like by what? Like improves it by X%, like from what's like the baseline. So it's so hard to like be like, yes, this is science.
Well, this is what we're playing. We're playing black and white game. No,
but couldn't you actually just pick your right ingredients that are known to have these properties, and you don't even have to back up the claims?
Are you ready? So this is a case. This is what I explicitly want to add. This was a case that the FDA believed that they were taking the ingredient claim, like the ingredient itself for vitamin C, and it's well documented, right, what vitamin C can do. However, they did not test it in their formulation, and they were making claims that bordered on therapeutic. And so this was an example of, and obviously the FDA is not consistent. I'm not saying that they're not consistent in how they regulate claims or brands, but this actually was one that they claimed had implied structure function, and that the company did not provide adequate scientific evidence. So this, I think, is one of those, oftentimes exactly brands will say, oh, well, we're making an ingredient claim, but the FDA is saying now, in some instances, that is not enough. So I thought that one was very interesting.
And your formulation makes such a difference. I mean,
Yeah.
being Abhishek, I definitely have that experience of like whatever you put it in doesn't necessarily translate to what it's expected to do, right?
Yeah.
And that also goes back to, suppliers are going to provide information for you, which all looks like fantastic, but once you actually put them in your own system, can actually have not only no effect, but also sometimes opposite effect as well.
Yeah, and I think someone's been on both sides of the table where we are producing ingredients and giving it to customers. Our data is in ideal conditions, and I mean that's the job of the ingredient manufacturer, to showcase the best possible case for their ingredients. So you have to really pay attention to that, what kind of formulation they used, what kind of models they used. And yeah, it's like if it's just kind of copy and paste those claims, it's most likely not going to work. But so glad that FDA call this out.
I mean, this is like a
hey, FDA gets involved.
I feel like this was like one in obviously I'm not going to disclose the brand because like I said in my email, I don't want that heat, but this was like such a I saw the brand name and I was like, what? Like I've never heard of this. And I kind of felt bad where I was like, was it just decided like out of nowhere? They're like, this brand, we're going to go after them. But
it's not only that they just take the claim from the pure ingredient and apply it to the finished product. It's how was that claim tested in the first place? If they use a 2D model, maybe that's never going to translate into real life application because there's so many factors that you need to take into account, like formulation, or if does it actually penetrate. So there's so many steps to go from the ingredient claim to the product claim that it's crazy that people do this.
Yeah.
I feel like I was set up by Jennifer on that one.
You all were. I know you guys were all quick, and I was like, take it down because you're gonna get a few more of these. All right. So this, now that you've learned your lesson, or maybe not, who knows, helps rebuild the skin's protective barrier, activates collagen production, reduces appearance of scars and stretch marks.
The first one is what really is.
The first one. What
do you mean by rebuild?
Yeah. All right. You guys are correct. Again, this was a call out by the FDA, but I thought was interesting was the structure function claims for approved new drugs. So I think that went to the scars and stretch mark one, actually. And that was really the sticking point for them, and as well as that it exceeded what's allowable for cosmetics. But I also think that language was pretty broad, right? A lot of people do talk about this like skin barrier or protective barrier, and it's kind of like, what does that mean? When you see that, what are your questions?
So is that the stretch marks itself, no cosmetic company should be able to claim the appearance of like scars and stretch marks? And
I believe so. I think that goes into a structure function. I know that they've been even deliberating on that whole like reduces fine line and wrinkles, and how that if that has the same kind of legal weight as an OTC, the language there. But I was actually more interested in hearing what you guys thought about the like helps rebuild the skin's protective barrier.
Oh, that's it is so broad that there is no way possible to even measure. And this is like, coming from formation scientists, I'm sure that Ido and Zach, like they have more to add. Yeah. But even for this, it's like, whoa, it's like skin is a complex organ.
Yeah.
And it just says like, I'm helping rebuilding the skin. I mean, there better be stem cells in there. Do that for you. Otherwise, it's like, I don't know what they're doing there.
Yeah, that sounds like there is lots of stuff happening to get rebuilding going on.
That also indicates that there's something wrong to begin with, right? When you hear help rebuild the skin's protective barrier, it means that there's some sort of disruption, and then you question, okay, what is that disruption? Is it most of the time when we're thinking about skin, we're thinking about like the hydration aspect and making sure that we keep all the water in, and making sure all of these sort of like allergens, other pathogens are outside of the skin, right? So in that way, are you talking about like increasing like differentiation of the layers, like forming additional layers in that regard? Are you like increasing lipid production to help with preventing the loss of hydration? It's very broad. So.
But I mean, one of the things that to me it's like difficult is how to bridge the gap between the real science fact and something that it's understandable and appealing for the consumer. So this is always something complicated, because maybe if they show the data, we can say, oh yeah, that's absolutely true, or no, that's absolutely marketing. But just getting the claim that a consumer is going to get and reading it from the scientific perspective makes it very hard to evaluate.
Yeah, that's like if we're to talk about like the 7 different levels of hell, this is like my core. Like, I hate this exercise when brands are like, "Can I say this?" And I'm like, "Yes, no. How strongly do you want to say it?" You know, like.
There almost has to be like in like pharmaceutical, right? There's a liaison, a medical liaison.
I like that idea.
Like translate, right?
Yeah.
To the language to like doctors, etc. What if there was a liaison for, the cosmetic personal care world?
I feel like yes, this is true. Although I feel like we've all played that role before and then gotten the like, so what you're saying is I can say this. And we're like,
No.
I don't think you're hearing what I've said.
That's why you put it in a third party. Like, so then it's off of the scientists, and then they could have like a mediator,
Or even the drawing pictures. Like, I'm going to show you animations to help with this conversation, right?
Yeah, I've done that before. I've used colors to explain.
Even if it's completely backed up by science, how do you translate that into something a consumer is going to understand and is going to relate to? I mean, that even if you've got all the science behind it, most of the people that are going to buy the product are not going to understand if you just give them the raw data or the raw results.
Yeah,
and
this is true. Yeah,
translating science to something that is understandable by the consumer, I do think it's an art, and you can use that to be scientifically rigorous, or you can just like try to slip small lie that makes it more appealing.
Yeah. Yes. And I do think that there are some companies that are doing this better than others. And I think that consumers are becoming more sophisticated and savvy. So understanding more about different aspects and not really wanting, kind of that veil to be covered, to just be like, it works. They're really looking for that proof of evidence. So I think it's an ongoing conversation, but you're right. This is definitely a very niche expertise. All right. Okay. So this one claims that it thoroughly cleanses without disturbing the skin's barrier. It calls out jojoba and meadow foam seed oils that nourish, leaves skin feeling soft and hydrated, and has a velvety smooth balm texture that rinses clean.
I feel like with the multiple choice questions, when it's all the same letter, and then you're like, wait, it can't be C again. Because I've already done C.
It's like, can I choose like 2 out of 4 or something?
Like I said, it could be both. I mean, they've got the ingredient, right? The ingredient call out saying like, okay, this quote unquote nourishes. They've got one that seems like it could be substantiated, right? Thoroughly cleanses without disturbing skin's barrier, maybe. One clearly marketing, right? Language like velvety smooth balm texture, rinses clean, which is fine. That's a description, albeit very eloquent, but but in general, this was marketing. So what this company did, which I thought was very interesting, was they actually had literature citations. And I looked up the literature citations, and they were for the jojoba and meadow foam seed oils, but not in their formula. It was just in general. Like, here's the common knowledge about this ingredient. And it's like, okay, great. But that goes back into, I think, our previous conversation, right? Where, yes, those ingredients do things, maybe in their neat form, maybe in the form that they were evaluated in, but I have zero idea if this wash-off application, it has that same benefit. And there was no clinical evidence. So I deemed this marketing.
And they probably didn't say anything about the levels of those oils too, right?
No.
Extraction methods that they use to get those oils, because depending on how you extract it, will definitely change the benefits. Done that a lot with especially natural extracts.
That's true.
Depending on the extraction method, you can take a lot of different specific compounds from there that you wouldn't with other extraction methods. So yeah.
This almost gives me nostalgia of my conversations. Probably Zach, you.
Yes, about how it's extracted. Yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole actually with that.
That sounds like me saying that kind of stuff.
Okay. All right, this one I put in because I was like, well, we did hair, so I want to get some hair in there so that we can talk about how to substantiate claims that have hair in them. So this product says that it intensifies repair results with, use of product X. It strengthens hair and reduces breakage, and it rebuilds hair bonds at a molecular level.
Do we know what ingredient was it?
You're asking too many questions. No,
Okay, I'm going to say that maybe they did it right. I'm just going to say that maybe they did it right.
Okay, what is doing it right? Explain your answer.
Because, those are all things that you can actually measure. And
Okay.
the testing, it's very well established, the conditions and how to do it. However, they maybe just had something that in theory works, but they never measured it. Because there's a lot of products out there, like we said, the ingredient by itself may do something, and here a molecule or a peptide might do it what they claim to do, but they never actually tested. But I'm going to trust them, and I'm going to think they did it.
So how would you establish the building hair bonds at a molecular level?
Well,
Dwight's like,
you know the chemistry of hair. You know what reactive groups are out there, and if you know that your molecule it's capable of reacting against those groups, there's a way of claiming it, and you can always use fluorescence microscopy attached to the molecule that you want, and if you are able to stick in your molecule, probably you are reacting.
So are you saying that like hair bonds at this level basically means like something is bonding to it, or that, for instance, like breaking like a cysteine bond, it's able to repair that?
You can repair bonds. At least at the surface level, I'm not going to defend these claims talking that ball penetrating inside.
Walk it back.
Inside the hair and rebuild from the inside out.
Yeah.
At a surface level, it can be done.
Okay.
Oh, so I think within the surface, I think that's where it is. Like when we think about molecular level, I'm thinking it was like here's the structure as a whole, and probably all the way to the medulla. It's like probably it's not doing that. If it changes stuff on the surface, it's still molecular. So yeah, I get Ido's point. It's like, yeah, there could be a way, because this is how it is worded. Like, oh, you could present enough evidence and make that claim. It's difficult to do that, and probably not many companies do it, but it's possible. Yeah. I still think it's marketing, though.
But even if you rebuild a molecular level, it doesn't tell you that it has any value.
That's true.
That's true.
We'll make your hair completely different than it was.
But you can actually do it and measure it. You can quantify it.
Yes. But I guess we are saying, too, it depends on what that, it is doing at that level. Is it strengthening it? Is it weakening it? Is it making curly straight curly? What is that? So, yeah. All right. So I'm not sure. I don't know how to decide on this. So this had basically numbers attached to it saying that X percentage saw more repair. But it was caveated, which I thought was interesting. They had these claims, but then there would be a little like asterisk that you'd have to hover your mouse over, and then you'd do it, and it'd say, when used as a 3-part system after one use. And you were like, okay, that's very specific. And they'd only have it for some claims versus others, right? So for the breakage claim, it was like when used with the X product. And so I am not sure. I guess I see how they visually have results, but I'm not sure if those visual results necessarily, are emblematic of, right? If you see this picture, what are the adjectives that you would use? To me, I would be like smoothing, right? Less frizzy. I am not quite sure I would relate it to like repair and strengthening hair.
I agree with you that picture does not support the claims, because there's no tensile force, there's nothing there. It looks prettier on the right, that's true.
I always I see that too though, and I'm like, yeah, well, this is how she came in, and then she met with somebody who's worked as a hairstylist for 20 years, and this is how it looks now, so it's interesting.
Where's the control?
Yeah.
Like what was just shampoo by itself? I want to see a picture of that.
Yeah.
No, they're never going to. Can I do a little tirade on images? So yeah. Using images, it's great, visual for a consumer. It's great because before and after, but please just have some sort of quantification after it. It could be all the way at the end that nobody's going to read ever. But for me as a scientist, going through products and even people that are, aren't scientists, but are very interested in think what they're going to be putting on their body or on their hair, having that sort of quantification it gives more confidence than just showing a before and after picture.
Yeah, honestly, I probably would have done a half head test on this, right, to show not just a before and after, but with a placebo treatment.
But they're not using the image to define their claims, which is a measurable 68, 68, 65.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
This is for the marketing side to show people, see, it looks good. And then we have the data to say it's slightly better. I don't know what the difference between 65 and 68 is, but I suspect the error bars are really large.
Yeah.
What's the quantification look like?
Yeah. And I guess, what do you think about, and we've encountered this, I think, before this group here, and thinking about how we evaluate something when we're oh, well, do we need to have it as a routine to control certain variables? When they have this caveated as well, when used as a 3-part system with, clearly their other products, what is the takeaway, I guess? What is the first inclination that you guys have when seeing something like that?
It doesn't work by itself.
Yeah.
That's my immediate thought.
Why do you need other products to achieve this result?
Or for me, if you're using just one ingredient in a 3-part system, but then either using the same ingredient, either trying to make claims for that one ingredient that just works in an entire regime, then it kind of starts making sense to me. It's okay, then I would want to use a 3-part system because it acts as a formulation. It would have different effects on how the ingredient is delivered. But when you mention that the 3-part system, that you have to buy something with a completely different set of ingredients, this with a completely different set of ingredients, the actives are changed. And now it's okay, now I'm not sure if I can actually give this product its due credit because there is an other product with a different set of actives that are probably doing the job for this. It's you're just hiding behind a big brother right now.
But the thing is, how did they test the negative control? Did they just use 2 products or a third different product in combination with the other 2? It's, I don't know, so many questions.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, the first and the third claim, it says when used as part of when used as a 3-part system, but the third claim is when used with X product. Is why are they using different?
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's because this isn't necessarily a product that you would only combine with one or the other, right? This product that they made this claim for was almost like the last step in anything that you would do. So it was interesting that they were but you can see a breakage if you use it with this product. Maybe they didn't see the same results in the 3-part system.
Which is confusing, at least.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea what repair means, but that's okay.
And that's the other thing.
I don't think, isn't that a bunk? Haven't they bunked that when you make claims about repairing, especially when it comes to split ends? But I'm not sure, can you technically repair hair?
To some extent, I guess.
Do I have everyone questioning their own position in I don't know. Was what I believed I could do accurate?
A 3-part system, I think you can have a 3-part system, but be upfront about it. The fact that you had to scroll in with your little cursor and be oh, and by the way, this is part of a 3-part system. It's just tell me.
Yeah.
Just if I have to buy the whole 3 set to get the results, just tell me up front.
Yeah.
That's the sort of misleading and sort of sure, marketing is a part of it, and like we're going to try to support science as much as possible. But when you're like deliberately sort of like, don't, we're going to tell you, but it's going to be like
hard to
in
find.
This sort of,
yeah.
right. Then that makes me a little queasy.
I completely agree with Zach. I believe that at this point, just being upfront, I think it's actually going to be more beneficial, because when people find out that there are so many caveats to the truth they're telling you, you realize that maybe it's not so true. But if they're upfront from the beginning, that, I don't know, at least makes you think that, okay, they're delivering the truth.
Yeah. I always appreciated on bottles when they said best when used with, and then they give the other product name, because that made me feel like it's best if used, but it's, it's standalone on its own. And so I think that, this brand has a hero ingredient that they use consistently in all of their products. And, this was an interesting, I think, positioning for them to take in terms of like, look at how good this works in a 3-part system. like very like low voice, capital letters, it works in a 3-part system. So
they could be selling three products.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Screaming from the rooftop.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to the claims, I think those claims can be obtained.
Yeah.
And can be sustained with science. I don't know if these people did it. Now I have some questions, but
I mean, you can just put a QR code right there at the picture for more data for people like us.
Oh, I thought you were going to say, I was like, I can link in the email address to like anyone I know at these companies in a QR code and just you can email them directly.
Oh my God. It's like unsolicited advice.
To all my listeners out there, please scan this QR code and send all your questions.
No, I meant it's like actual part of packaging is like, I understand that, when you put a lot of numbers and data, it gets confusing for the consumer. It's like, there's too much data. It's like, I'm just here to buy cosmetics. Why is this like a test? I don't want to feel it like a test.
I'm also curious about when it comes to, I get that like in science, there's these very quantitative measure, but I'm also always curious, like at what is the degree in which you actually see something, right? Like what's that? I don't know what to call that, right? Like it's almost like the limit of detection. Like if we were thinking in like analytical terms, this is like at what point, like if it improves it by 50%, but I'm still not able to see a change in like it doesn't manifest, like doesn't even matter. And is instead that, improvement not at supposed to be at the level like you start seeing change. That's like your 0, right? I don't know.
But if you think about it in terms of like prevention, right? Like a lot of that you won't see, right? So all of this, the next generation of individuals that are using skincare, right? Whether it's Gen Z, like right now, is really becoming the new generation that's using skincare products, and they're thinking about the longevity of their skin. So it's maybe it's not so much anymore about like, okay, let's reduce like wrinkles and like, all these sort of visual sort of aspects, but it's to prevent that from happening later in life. And it's hard to always like have that visual aspect for something like prevention. You just have to support it with enough data and publications as well, because it's not just in the consumer space that these studies are done, but also in the academic space as well. So
yeah, I'm just thinking about like almost like a reverse clinical, and not like, oh, you use it for 2 weeks to see how well it does. It's like we track 20-year-olds into their 40s, and then we're like, look at how bad she aged. It's a long game marketing plan.
I don't know who would sign up for those studies, right? Somebody, okay, we're going to put sunscreen on one half of your face and the other half we're not.
We're just going to see what's going to happen to you.
I mean, if the payment is adjusted for inflation throughout those 30 years, maybe.
Well,
I wouldn't sign up for that. I don't know.
The epidemiologists would love that.
There's a recent case study of a woman that was just applying sunscreen on her face, but not on her neck. And you can actually see a huge difference between her face and her neck, like it belonged to 2 completely different women.
That's just awful.
There's a case out there that we could use.
So,
Yeah,
I mean,
retrospective.
she didn't aim to be like she wasn't like, I'm going to do a science experiment. It was just, or what? I have questions.
But to Ito's point, it's a proof of concept, right? That like, okay, there is long-term sort of benefits for these sort of things, and the most that we can do is try to create enough physiologically relevant models to simulate that, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of like what we have done, and I in the lab too, is to sort of simulate some of this sort of prevention methodologies. So.
No, but I think a lot of big companies are onto that, and especially with AI and ML, it's just they can actually do that. Like they are setting up this like simulations where if you were to believe in the product and apply it for a given time, this is how your skin would look in 5 years, and that's an amazing catch. And if those can be backed by actual like how the skin changes in 1 week or a month.
Oh yeah.
With measurable like science data, that's like a winner.
I did a project once with a big multinational company, and we went and visited them on site to their, where they measure all their clinical outcomes. And it was, one of those that actually shows in a different light, kind of the sun damage that you had. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I want to do this. And this woman goes, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I highly recommend you don't. Because she was just like, what's done is done. The damage is done. Like, you don't want to know. And I was just like, okay, never mind. So from her perspective, I think like once you've done, and I'm not sure, and we can talk about this maybe on another episode when it comes to like these longevity claims, like how much repair can you actually do to skin once you've, somebody like me who grew up with like, I don't think my mother knew what sunscreen was. She was just like, you're Filipino and dark. That's what happens. And, I remember the dermatologist being like, the way that we get rid of acne is we put you under a UV light for 5 to 10 minutes, right? Like, so, can things, when we start looking at claims that talk about repair specifically for the skin, how much of that repair can you actually see? Or is it just not incurring additional damage, or what does that reversal look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's companies out there now that they can store some of your like stem cells, right, for longer down the road.
What?
Yeah. So when I went to the Science of Skincare Summit, and they were 2 different companies. Well, that I was there that were talking about this sort of aspect. So.
Would the idea be that you'd like re-inject your stem cells like into your face, and then it like is like your own Botox?
Like that, I definitely need to do a lot more like research myself into it. I thought it was an interesting idea. Also, like the storing of that for long periods of time, like it's quite interesting. And the whole premise is like get it as young as you can, because then it'll be more viable.
I was gonna say, I was like, I don't want them to take my aging stem cells now. I want infant stem cells.
Yeah,
and I think this concept has been like used for things like wound healing, etc. So I mean, it's not a far-fetched like idea. I would just, for me, I would need to see a lot more data on it. But it's quite. I thought it was quite interesting.
Okay.
That's amazing. It's like point of no return. Like, how do you push that point of no return? And that's what you can prove and even market. It's like, okay, 22 or 25 is the point of no return. It's like, if you haven't used the product before the stage, is oh my God. But don't worry, we can use this and then push that day to 29 or 30.
Yeah, I mean, like as like cells are aging just like us, right?
Yeah.
So, like, we think about a fibroblast, it's only going to, keep producing its collagen, elastin for so long, and as splits and gets older. Other sort of like external factors also playing a role there. They're just not going to do it as efficiently. So, can we kind of reverse that process?
Yeah.
I kind of see how you're going to use the stem cells like for wound healing or those kind of things. How do you apply stem cells in a daily skincare routine?
I think it goes back to even like, there's a lot of companies looking at plant stem cells, and I have similar questions.
I mean, I totally get it. They might do something in an in vitro model, but I don't see it how by applying it on top of your skin, they're going to do anything. I mean, probably they're going to die in 10 minutes.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think the idea was injections.
Oh, you do injections?
That's what I would think, because otherwise, to your point, right? Even like micro injections where they have those sort of like tiny
microneedles.
Even that, I don't
but how do you keep cells alive? I mean, cells do not last forever out of their ideal conditions. How do you go from harvesting the cells, putting them into the
your body expresses an inflammatory response and gets puffy and vibrant looking, and that is how it works.
I'd rather get
just inject foreign things into your face.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you get the lip fillers.
Exactly.
Right?
It's just an inflammatory response.
Exactly. Paralyze your muscles with Botox, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like skincare for masochists.
I like it.
Okay, real quick. Raise your hand if you have dealt with active instability. If you have ever opened a jar of retinol cream and smelt an off odor, or noticed your formula went dark brown, chances are you are dealing with active instability. It's never fun when the formula you've been working on goes south and the due date is only days away. That's why we've encapsulated the trickier ingredients to work with so you can kick the stability struggle to the curb. From retinol to vitamin C, we make it easier to work with those ingredients that typically give you that 3 p.m. headache. The cellulose shell shields the active from outside exposure. Things like air and light that are likely to cause active breakdown, giving you the power to create stable and effective formulas without the trial and error. Ready to quickly create effective skincare formulas? Discover Tagra's Cellucaps line by going to tagra.com/cellucaps. So, have you encapsulated yet? Now back to the show.
All right. A few more. Okay. Visibly reduces multiple signs of aging caused by environmental assaults of modern life.
Oh, wow.
Science!
Whoa!
This actually is this actually is an example, and I'm going to go to the next slide. This is why this is a good example of science. Okay, so they didn't claim gene modification or disease treatment. Instead, they used a mechanistic approach. So they took in vitro data to explain how ingredients work, and then they validated those benefits with an observed clinical endpoint. So they connected these mechanistic data to consumer perceivable outcomes, which obviously is critical for regulatory safe claims, but also scientific-based claims. And they focused on cosmetic endpoints instead of biological or medical ones. So, here they did, and it wasn't, I couldn't access the full data because I needed to have apparently a medical license to do that, which I don't know if any of you guys do. Next time I'll hit you up. But basically, the in vitro data looked at these natural synchronization of circadian rhythms. So, the antioxidant response in DNA repair markers and a keratinocyte culture exposed to oxidative stress. They use skin explants for quote unquote cellular detoxification, which I really hate that phrase. And I wish people would stop using it because to me, I'm kind of like, I don't know. They did list the PER1 and DNA repair enzymes. And then they had clinical trials, which were double-blind placebo-controlled, which I thought was encouraging, where they were measuring skin hydration barrier function and reduction of fine line and wrinkles using, things like the confocal, the VisioScan, all of those tools that you're used to.
Can you go back to the claims again?
Yeah.
This is almost, the way it reads is a marketing fluff, but it might be backed by science. But how much of this is no longer a cosmetic and now into a drug?
So because they focused on cosmetic claims, the FDA deemed that it was not going into a therapeutic area, right? So they're saying it reduces multiple signs of aging. They're not necessarily calling out what that, may be. I thought it was interesting, the environmental assaults of modern life. So that to
marketing.
Me well, yes, but it does indicate to me that they're using models that the oxidative stress is likely like pollution, UV, right? So that one was an example of taking in vitro data, translating it to the ex vivo level and then that perceived outcome in a clinical. Zach, you have skepticism on your face.
I see it in my face.
Yeah.
And I'm going,
I was like reading something that was like, like my face can stop talking. It's my looks that need closed captioning that people can't read. So
no. So the interconnectedness of these claims is one thing, especially the clinical trials, like to support visibly looking instruments. I don't know if they related to the claim they're talking about against environmental aspects. There's no indication that for the clinical trials they had any sort of like UV radiation treatment or like even like pollution in vivo. Circadian rhythm stuff too. So from what I have read on circadian rhythm, and there might have been more related to it. So it's a very interesting concept, right? Like we have a circadian rhythm, right? With our sleep cycle, our cells have a similar circadian rhythm as well. From what I have read, the closest connection with the circadian rhythm is really as it relates to hydration and like something called aquaporins. So it helps with this sort of like transport of hydration into those keratinocytes. Antioxidant repair also follows that sort of same circadian rhythm. So I'd really want to see like exactly how they simulated that and how they showed the sort of like repair. Did they like have UV radiation to disrupt the circadian rhythm during their culture, and then they showed a back to quote unquote normal sort of response for the antioxidant repair, because typically during the day you don't see that antioxidant repair. It's typically at night that those sort of pathways start to increase. So I would definitely need to see more of how they did it, but I know we don't have medical license.
Yeah, why is that? Is that there's this response at only I guess at night, like in a resting period? Is it because there's like only this is the like weird model that I'm thinking in my head, like there's only so much energy like a cell can expend, and so when it's like disrupted by exposure to the environment, it's basically just kind of not doing anything until at night when it has the ability or the capacity, the bandwidth, if you will, to fight and repair. Like why do they know why the like skin cells have this circadian rhythm that corresponds to different aspects of like water transport as well as antioxidant and I get antioxidant, not repair, repair from potential environmental aggressors?
Yeah, I mean it's in some ways like a response to the day's sort of aggressions, right? That's when it's going to be active, and then also it's a preemptive sort of application as well for the following day. I'm looking at these like expression levels of like PER1 is one of those circadian rhythm related genes as well. So it's interesting.
I've got a question. Why do they specify like skin's natural circadian rhythm? Circadian rhythm is something that involves the whole body. It's not like your skin has a specific circadian rhythm and I don't know, your liver has a different one. It works like as a whole. And
that's true.
I don't really understand that claim. Why it's...
I mean, can your skin circadian rhythm be out of balance if you're like out partying or like, like does it only happen when your eyeballs are closed?
I mean, it would be your whole body circadian rhythm, which of course implies the skin, but it's not like you have 5 different circadian rhythms going on and your skin gets into one and the rest of your body gets into a different one.
Everyone has the same bedtime.
Yeah, there was a couple of interesting studies where they took keratinocytes by themselves, right, and then exposed them to UV radiation, and then ones that you don't expose to high levels of UV radiation, you can see the sort of like natural circadian rhythm versus when they were just kept in like a dark room as well. because they didn't like express certain factors. I think Pure One was one of those. There's also clock. If I'm remembering it correctly, the gene. So, but yeah, there was like at one point, one of our marketing individuals wanted to look at circadian rhythm, and I was like, it's an uncharted water. Like there's like very few publications as it relates to skin specifically, and having like keratinocytes by itself. So interesting. Is it science? Is it marketing? I mean, like they did studies. Like science included, right? But whether or not that it translates exactly, I don't know.
So I think what they've done well is actually restraint. They've shown that apparently they've done in vitro ex vivo clinical trials, which is more than most brands do out there, and they have restrained into the language which they use only that which is proved by clinical trial.
Yeah,
and they've just used the environmental conditions part of that claim, and they've used ex vivo and in vitro to back that part. It's like, look, we've exposed keratinocytes or ex vivo skins to different environmental stresses, and we have data against that. And we did a clinical trial, and this is what the clinical trial claims, and we just put that as the most important benefit out there. And for me, it's like if you go to a marketing professional with this much data, they're like, oh, let's make 5 claims out of this.
Yeah, it could have been far more egregious. I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
It's like great.
Okay. So X brand product name for facial wrinkles is a lightweight serum with with the active ingredient to combat signs of aging.
I don't trust anything anymore.
I know, right?
You could throw some data in there, maybe.
What sense of aging? I don't know. Like they're just saying it has an ingredient.
Exactly, that's why.
I don't even remember what I put here. Let's see. Science.
Yeah.
So this was a randomized triple mass active control clinical trial. So it was not placebo controlled, but that's fine. But it did have a fairly, good cohort, 70 women, ages 35 to 45, with evaluation after 3 months using the VisioScan corneometer. Misspelled customers with comparative photographs evaluated by a certified dermatologist, and then obviously the self-assessment. So this was actually what I would call like a clinical trial, right, versus a consumer perception trial, because they were looking at endpoints that had quantitative measurements. So again, could have used placebo controlled. But if they were testing the formula and not the ingredient itself, that makes sense.
Yeah, to begin with, it was not really a very compelling claim. Yeah, we weren't doing much.
Didn't wow you.
No, I was like, but they were. I think it's like if it would me as a consumer, it's like, oh, they're actually honest about it. It's like, look, okay, give it a shot.
I'm surprised they actually published as much as they did on like what they did and the people and how they measured it. I was like, oh, okay, that was refreshing.
Yeah,
like obviously we'd have questions, but yeah. Okay, this was a really funny one. It was a product that said 2 dabs a day helps keep the surgeon away, and it had also the knife styles of the rich and famous. Yeah, I mean,
what does that like mean?
I know. Well,
where's the claim?
It's never. Yeah, it's. So what's really interesting? Okay, so the NAD, which is the National Advertising Division, claimed that messages like this basically say that the results are cosmetic or comparable to cosmetic surgery, which I think they were trying to make. However, what was really funny was the National Advertising Review Board had a opposite opinion, that it didn't convey that, and instead they were using humor. And so it was an example that was used in a magazine article to talk about, like, well, if you make a claim and it's just humorous, it's okay. Like, I think one time at a former company, we wanted to make claims on acne, and we're like, but we can't. So we were like, maybe if we're just like smackney,
oily skin.
Yeah. Just, using funny terms or, slang. And so this, I think, was interesting in that, to me, like, they are making the claim that, like, not necessarily that's comparable to cosmetic surgery, but that it works as well as cosmetic surgery. But because they did it in a funny way, they were like, ha, it's okay.
This is so interesting. Like one body would have actually let them get away with it.
Yeah, I know.
It's amazing.
All right. Deep hair nourishment, surprisingly lightweight, daily moisture.
Sure. Like,
Marketing. You should know this whole deep moisture thing is like problematic in the hair care space. What I thought was really interesting was that they this first one, this is like verbatim. Deep hair nourishment. Get deeply nourished, weightlessly soft hair with shampoo containing naturally derived camellia oil. And I was like, can this oil not be naturally derived? And I looked it up, and it's like, no, there's no synthetic this oil, right? Like, so I was just like, it's a little redundant, but it also just makes you feel like you're like, oh, well, this is the natural aspect of it. So they really were focused on ingredient claim, but I think what to me was most telling was this whole idea of like hydration, which brands use a lot, where it's like you actually don't want water in your hair. That's actually what, like, it swells and breaks.
But it's both things. There's the moisturizing water. It's not good for your hair.
Yeah,
that's a fact. You cannot argue against that. But it's also nourishment. How can you nourish something that it's not living?
That's dead.
Hair is a dead fiber. So how can you nourish something that it's not living? I mean, to me, I don't know. It's something that I've read multiple times, and I don't know how brands get with that claim without customers not like freaking out.
Yeah, I don't know how we even started to associate those things, right? Like, at what point in my life did I say, like, you know what, my hair needs hydration, and then I believe that, like, that meant one thing, or like, my hair needs to be nourished, right? Like, it's interesting, like, the origins of marketing terms and how, it became common vernacular or, perceived as like desirable.
I mean, I understand that it might come from the skincare, where those concepts made a lot of sense, and people can relate to things they understand. So they just translated that into the hair industry. But again, as you mentioned, water, it's no good for your hair. It makes it softer and frizzy. And I think that they just want to use the word nourish because it's something people understand. But what they really want to claim is that you're providing chemicals or something to the hair fiber that improves, I don't know, any characteristic or strengthens the hair or something like that. But trying to use words that consumers cannot relate to, or let's phrase it differently, using words that consumers already relate to or understand, it's easier than coming up with new concepts.
Yeah. And I will have this was part of my exercise with you guys when I was like, what is your personality as a texture? Right? That whole concept of like putting words that, adjectives to things that you wouldn't normally use, right? Like if someone were to ask you, like, describe your personality, I highly doubt many of you would have said what Dwight said, flat paint, which I thought was very funny. But you know what I mean? Like, I think that goes back to like this kind of association of words with things and the deeper meaning, and how they're maybe misrepresented. Like this whole exercise, right, is like misrepresentation of words sometimes, but also maybe creative uses.
Maybe what needs to be in the room when we're making like the claims is the philosopher, as well, so that they can like really like, but what is the word? What's the etymology of the word?
Is the last one Winnie the Pooh authorized because it's luscious honey?
Luscious honey. Yeah, not just honey, but luscious honey.
I'm not sure what that means, and I'm not sure I want it.
I feel like this is
supposed to eat it, or am I supposed to put it on my skin? What does that mean?
I feel like somebody went on to like a website to be like, what is another word for this? And like when you look for the synonyms, and then it pops up, and you're like, okay, yeah, let's use that there.
But I mean, to me, it's surprising the fact that moisture is considered as something good in hair when everyone knows that once you shower, your hair is softer, or when it gets very humid, your hair gets frizzy. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, people want to moisture their hair. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's something not working here.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so we're running low on time, so I'm going to go to one of this. This one had panelists, we'll say science, but this one is the last one that I will present to you guys, which I thought was very interesting. And this is actually, I would say, a well-known case study, but the brand was making a combination of claims. One of them was that youth is in your genes, and you can reactivate it by X company's product name. Their first skincare that boosts the activity of genes to see visibly younger skin in just 7 days. And then it says, this X boosts the activity of genes.
They get sued?
They sure did. So this is what's very interesting. So they actually did do a clinical study, and they did do in vitro work. But what they didn't do was, and this is what the FTC, basically broke down in their complaint, was that when they were given women this, this questionnaire to answer over the course of 8 weeks, they were not giving them any, questions that would indicate any improvement in a particular measure. So it was just levels of agreement. And so even though that is what, done in other studies, which we've seen previously, they were saying, you can't make these claims. And one example was 85% of women gave a positive response to a question asking if the skin appeared more radiant and luminous after 7 days. However, only 35.5% of them indicated that they agreed completely, right? So if you use a 9-point scale and you are, in the middle is neutral, and you're only 1 point off of neutral, can you consider that to be, agreeing that your skin appeared more radiant and luminous, right? And the FTC said, no, you can't, because only 35% of your studies actually said they completely agreed. And then, what was interesting again was they did do in vitro assays. They actually did in vivo assays where they studied gene expression in young versus old males after repeated exposure to the forearm. However, they only did that to understand a mechanism of action, and they didn't use their product or ingredient, and that's what they used for their claim of. And so this was a class action lawsuit. And the company was ordered to pay a lot of money. So, yeah, I just wanted to conclude on that. But I think you guys saw jeans and went immediately like, did they get sued? Yeah, did they get sued? It was like, yes.
Like, danger. I mean, like, even for like white papers, right? I mean, people put gene expression. You do not put on your like website any sort of like, that's just asking for, the FTC to come knocking at your door, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure.
And right now, Zach brought a very relevant topic: white papers. White papers cannot be considered true science. There's no one reviewing your data, so you can basically write down whatever you want, and you don't have. It's not a peer review publication.
No, it's true. It holds a different weight.
Well,
it's interesting. I used to know a gentleman that used to like make his life's aim to just write like rebuttals to people's white papers, like in response to this white paper, and then he'd write like an entire response and like publish it. And it's like, I guess that's a hobby or something, maybe. Yeah, this is true. I'm very hesitant sometimes to like introduce him to people. I'm like, he's kind of a dick, but.
Or does he post it just on a blog? Like...
His own personal blog.
What's the impact factor of that blog?
Yeah, I know, right? So I don't know about you guys, but when I was starting to do this exercise, at the end of it, I walked away, I think, even more confused than when I started, because I was like, it's not black and white, I think was really the takeaway in this, and that there's a lot of gray area and ambiguity. And so, how we think about claims and how they would be substantiated are maybe very different than how a marketing person would, for sure, but also how the FTC and FDA view them, as well as how consumers resonate to them. So, but I appreciate you guys being on this and participating. I think that was great dialogue in terms of, what potentially product developers should do, hopefully, but also, things that consumers can maybe start to scrutinize and look for. I'd love for each of you to give, any sort of takeaway or concluding thought that you have. And I'll start just based on my screen. Zach, you're up at the top. So
I had more time.
well, remember, this is a podcast that we can edit, so we can pause for 10 minutes. Make it look like you were just like, boom.
I mean, it really just, I think this exercise was so helpful in terms of like just showing the claims first and then showing the data afterwards. There's so many times that I'm like, I was like, oh yeah, sure. Like this could be claimed. Yeah. And then you see the data and you're like, that's not how I would have done it kind of thing. And vice versa too. Some that I would have thought was marketing and maybe I was like, oh, okay, I guess in that interpretation, right? I think when it comes down to is providing your customer with as much information as you can provide, right? And some of that comes into like science communication, right? So I love websites that provide that, or brands that provide that, science communication aspect. They'll have like a little tab, like learn more about like advanced glycation end product. Yeah. It's like, cool. Yeah. Like you obviously have taken the time to like try to explain that, which gives me as a scientist more confidence in using like that product versus somebody that's, claiming better than knife, or what was the joke?
Knife styles of the rich and famous.
Knife styles of the rich and famous. I'll have to remember
which,
that one.
is funny to think about, like out of like cosmetic context, you'd be like, what? Like it has two applications that are normal, like cosmetics and like culinary, but then everything outside of it, you're like, I'm concerned about this.
Yeah, to your point, right? It doesn't take a scientist to like be like, this doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this is a really fun exercise, and yeah, it just definitely challenged some of my preconceived notions. And it just goes to show that this is an ever like expanding field, like, and the line between skincare, personal care into pharmaceuticals is continuously being blurred. Such a way. So
for sure.
But yeah.
Awesome.
It was very fun.
Thank you. Abhishek, you're up.
So it's like I would view this as a letter to dear consumer. It's like this is what you do. You have different levels of scrutiny. It depends on where you're shopping. Is if you are shopping at a CVS or at a Sephora or Ulta, or or just viewing something that the dermatologist prescribed when you just picked it from the pharmacy, and there are just some words that shouldn't be it shouldn't be found at any popular cosmetic store, but you could like ask more questions about it or try to know more about it when it comes off a prescription desk. So I think this is what we are understanding is the level of science that's required to enter into an ODC market, like a pharmacy, prescribed market from a doctor, or just a skincare cosmetic store. So like be careful of those words. If something looks good to be true, it probably is too good to be true.
Love Abhishek. That's how we conclude that letter.
Yes.
Dwight?
Well, I mean, science and marketing should be blended together, because science should support the marketing effort to inform consumers, myself included, if it's done ethically, responsibly. So I go back to maybe a bumper sticker I saw many years ago called "Question Authority." It's okay to ask the questions, because that's part of trying to learn what's behind all this. So if you see something that somebody's putting out there, it's a marketing phrase, but it could actually have really good basis of why they came up with that.
Yeah.
And dig deeper.
Constancio.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. This was an amazing exercise that made me think a lot about how I see claims and how claims are brought to life. And it's obvious that I do think that science people like we need to learn a little bit about marketing, but I do think that marketing people need to learn a lot about science and how they must support their claims. You cannot just say, hey, this does X, Y, Z because we have these very little results. I don't think science works that way. And as Zach was saying, there's a lot of people that know much more. They know where to find the information. and they are becoming much more informed, and brands should be aware of that and not do crazy claims.